Hey everyone, and welcome to Ecto. My name is Michelle. I'm going to be your host tonight. I actually have a very interesting story tonight. It's actually two versions of the same story, and y'all know what I'm talking about here in just a little while, but it's really wild. This story came to me actually about 3 weeks ago, and I've been trying to make sense of it. Then when I finally got a hold of the people who sent it to me, it's like, oh, okay, now it makes sense. But like I said, it's gonna blow your mind. I get sent a lot of stories in my email, different things, and I will get to them all, I promise. It's just sifting through them. Now, some of them, some more like alien ones or like Bigfoot type stuff, I will be sending those to Denise Harris, which a lot of people have already agreed to. So if you sent me stories that have to do with more like Bigfoot, alien type stuff, I will be forwarding those to Denise Harris, because that's more her alley with the close encounters, or the encounters of the strange kind. So, definitely. I have a feeling she will love to have those stories. So, anyways, I'm going to get back to this in just a minute. You guys are about to hear a really crazy story, and it's just wild. So, I'm going to just play this song real quick, just so I can get my kind of stuff together here, and I will be back in just a minute. Thanks.
When you see it, girls, it's all like you. Give it out to twice like you. When I say I'm not about it, cause I choose to be happiness. The God is good, I choose to be. The permanent be like when you see the sea, it's all like me. Even I do, and it's twice I do. Then I say I'm not about the sea. I will not let the sea take me. I will not get into that drink. It's gonna be let me do it.
Alright, everyone, and welcome back. Okay, I said there's a few, there's probably actually like 3 versions to the story. That's why it's only going to be one story, but it's actually going to be 3 stories wrapped into one. You'll know what I'm talking about here in a minute. I was sent this story by a guy named Emilio that I know, and it is just insane. All the people involved in the story now know each other, but it's okay. We're just going to start right at the beginning. Back in the late 90s, Emilio's grandmother, Maria, was traveling along a highway in just a very, densely populated, area where it's just mostly forest, mountains, stuff like that. Well, she had disappeared, and nobody could find her. They sent out, they called the police, everything, and of course she's an adult, so there's nothing they can do, even though she was elderly. There's still nothing they could do. Now, this woman, he said, was a Spitfire in her 90s, still driving. I said she'd whap you upside your head for looking at her wrong. But he said, my grandmother had disappeared. We were all beside ourselves. We just couldn't believe that, something had happened to her. She was like our rock. They said after one day, they had gotten a phone call from a police station 2 towns over saying that the grandmother was found and that she was fine, she was alive. And when they got to her, she kind of had a little bit of a crazy story. She claimed that she had wrecked her car, that something had jumped out in the road in front of her. She had wrecked her car, and an angel came down the embankment and put her in a bubble. Now, this is a woman in her 90s. An angel had come down the embankment, put her into a bubble, floated her to the top to the highway, and walked with her for miles, holding her hand, keeping her floating above the ground so she wouldn't get tired, and brought her to a truck stop. And, of course, everybody thought she hit her head, that she must have just wrecked. So they checked a 5-mile radius around this truck stop. There's no car. So then, of course, the next obvious thing is they thought maybe she got carjacked, somebody hit her, dumped her off at the truck stop, something. Well, this woman maintained her stories for years, even up until the day she died. She died several years later, and going through her house, they found several pictures of a person she had drawn that none of them knew. It looked like a very tall lady with like long blonde hair, and it was like a picture that she had drawn with her standing next to the lady, but she was like, 2 to 3 feet shorter than the lady. So they're thinking this was maybe the angel that she thought she saw. Well, going through her house, they found, several things, that she had embroidered, apparently, like everything she gave to the kids. Hold on a sec. Oh, my grandmother had a habit of everything she made for us. Blankets, t-shirts, whatever. She embroidered a small heart with her initials on them. So she knew so we all knew where the things came from. And going through her house, we found several items like that. She was kind of a pack rat, and we found so many things. But then we noticed these boxes that went out to military people. So that she would send them insulated things such as blankets, things like that, and she embroidered her little heart, and that's a nice surprise. So she basically sent out stuff to military people because she said overseas she thought they would be cold. Oh, that's cute. So they found all these things and they packed it, So they said, we just went on, and he said, it always bothered me about that angel. I just couldn't figure out what happened, and it's always bothered me. He said, as years went by, I had gone to school to be a paramedic. He says, this is where my story comes in. Oh, wow, this is going to be good. Okay, I thumbed through these, but every time I read this, it's amazing to me. Okay, give me 1 second. Okay, he says, I went to a school to become a paramedic. And I actually worked the stretch of highway, or near the stretch of highway where my grandmother was found. It's a 20-mile, oh my gosh, let me turn that down. It's a 20-mile thing, like set of roadway that I work on. I'm guessing like paramedics have like a certain section of town or something, I'm not sure. Okay, got that fixed. Sorry about that ringing noise. Okay, so he says we work different sections, and one of the sections that I work at is that section of highway. I did not know this. I didn't know they did sections. Okay, so he said one night that we got a call that a car had overturned on the highway and that a woman was trapped inside. He said, of course, we flew there, and we were one of the first people on the scenes besides an officer. He said, I get over to the car, and there's a woman inside, and she's shaking. He said, I'm assuming not only just because she was in shock, but it was also very cold outside. He said, we start working on her, and my partner had taken what appeared to be a blanket off of this woman. He said, when I went to go grab the blanket and I looked, something caught my eye. In the corner of the blanket was my grandmother's embroidered heart with her initials. He said, I just instantly went into just crazy mode. Where did you get? He says, I'm supposed to be helping this woman. Instead, I'm yelling at her. Where did you get this? How did you get this? How did you know my grandmother? And of course, he said the officer had to pull me back, and my partner thought I had lost my mind. He said, so I eventually collected myself, and I went to work. Work mode set in, and I went in and I did my job. I was saving this woman, a woman who possibly could have hurt my grandmother. I don't know. She kept mumbling, but nobody could hear what she was saying. When the firemen got there, they got her out of the car, and we transported her to the hospital. And my partner said that I should drive because he didn't think that I should be with her, which I agreed. Said, so we get to the hospital, and I waited and I waited, and our shift was almost over, so I decided to wait at the hospital. I told my partner that I would find my own way back. And he said, I kept asking people, has she said anything, And of course, nobody's telling me anything because I'm not her family. He said, these two people come in a panic. They were older people, probably in their 50s. Older things, guy, okay. Older people in their 50s. And they said, how's it, they said her name. Said, her name's Christina. How's our daughter? How's our daughter? How's our daughter? So he said, I knew that this was her parents. Oh, great work there, Sherlock. Okay, sorry. All right, so he says that he's trying to talk to them, but of course they went straight back. He said, I waited in the hospital for hours until they came out, and Christina had been kept overnight for observation. And I asked the parents if I could possibly talk to her. Well, they're thinking, of course, that it's official for some kind of ambulance stuff. So, of course, they said, sure, go ask her questions. She's okay. So he says, I go back to the room, and there's this lady sitting in the hospital bed. He said, I didn't even realize what she looked like, because when you're in that kind of a mode, he says, all you're looking for is injuries. He said, I looked, when you go to the job, you look for injuries. He said, half the time you couldn't even tell what color eyes they have. I said, I went into the room and I seen this woman he said that I see is just absolutely beautiful, even though she's banged up. Ooh, creeper. No, I'm just kidding. All right, so I go in there and I could tell by her face that she wasn't capable of anything to be harmful. So I started asking her questions. She said that something got in the way of her road. Oh, something jumped out in the roadway. She said, I swerved, I tried to correct, and my car ended up flipping over. She said, and this very tall lady came out of the woods with a blanket, and she put the blanket over me and told me that help was coming. And he says, what do you mean, a tall lady? He said she was very tall. She had long blonde hair, almost white. The hair was almost white. She said, I just remember her being very tall, and she talked with a calming voice and kept telling me that help was on the way. Said when the officer pulled up is when she disappeared. So he said, I talked to her for a few hours and we got to know each other. He said she actually wanted my phone number, so I had given her my cell number and we had been talking. He said, I went back to the site that night. I took a cab back to where my car was, and I went back to that part of the roadway. And there, other than the footprints that were around the car, because it had been snowing apparently, there were no footprints leading out of the woods where Christina had said this person had come. As the weeks went by, officers also questioned Christina as how she got this blanket, because the case of his grandmother was still open because nobody knew how this woman ended up in the truck stop. They didn't know if she had gotten beat up or anything like that, so. Okay, I'm reading here. Okay, this is Christine. You just heard Christina's story that she had said, but now Christina, in an email here, says, about 5 minutes before the wreck happened, she said, I could have sworn I heard a voice in my car saying, it's going to be okay and you'll know why. And she said, when I turned around, that's when I turned back and something was in the road. Oh. Said, I couldn't believe it. After I had flipped over, I'm laying there and I'm freezing. She said, I just remember being so cold because the windows had broke out. She said, I was cold because I was in shock, and I was also freezing because it was very cold outside. She said, this woman came from the woods, a very tall woman with a blanket. She said, this blanket will keep you warm. She said, which I found out later was his grandmother's, one of her insulated blankets that she sent to the military. Oh, how freaking, okay. So, fast forward, these two get married. the paramedic driver and the woman who flipped over end up getting married. So now they're married, and present day they have 2 children. As they're still trying to figure out this mystery. They just didn't understand this mystery. Well, about 6 months ago, he says, there was another wreck in the same spot. So I couldn't believe it, the exact same spot. So we had gone to the wreck, and there were 2 children in the car, and the mother kept spouting, "Please save my children." The children in the car were not hurt at all. The children in the car claimed that a woman appeared and put them in a bubble. Oh. Put them in a bubble so they wouldn't be hurt in the wreck. The mother was hurt, but a woman came out of the woods again, and she had a blanket with her. And she covered the mother up and said, "Everything will be fine. Help is on the way." And all described her as a tall woman with long blonde hair that was almost white. And again, he says, I get on the scene and it's my grandmother's blanket. He said, I couldn't believe it. He says, again, another one of her blankets. Is this my grandmother's ghost helping people? What is going on? He says, I don't understand. He says, I don't understand what's going on. So he says, again, now him and his present wife now go to the hospital and visit this woman because they both have similar stories. And she tells him the exact same thing, that she heard a woman's voice saying, it's going to be okay, don't worry about it. And right before that happened, a car wreck happened. Oh my gosh. She said the woman came out of nowhere with the long blonde hair and gave her the blanket. Okay, so he says, I started becoming suspicious of this area. Well, yeah. He says, I started becoming suspicious of this area because I'm not sure what's going on. He said, so me and a few buddies of mine had gone down there and we started combing the woods down the embankments and everything. He said, within an hour, my buddies found my grandmother's car. My grandmother's car was down at the bottom of the embankment, surrounded by extremely large bushes. It was pretty late and we couldn't get anything done at that point, so we decided to go back the next day. So I called the highway patrol, we called the police, and of course they wanted to cordon out the area to make sure there was nothing going on, which they did, and there was nothing. They said that they found the car. There was some blood in the car where the driver's side was, because that's where his grandmother had wrecked. And upon inspection of the car, there were several blankets in the trunk of the car. Those insulated blankets with the heart embroidered on it. Several were in the trunk of the car. And also in the trunk of the car, there was a large box, which of course the police confiscated everything and took it to the tow yard. And he said it took them 15 days and they released everything in the car to the family. He says, which was me. Said we went down and we were looking at the car and of course again seeing all the blankets. And in the car, in that box, oh my gosh, they found a bunch of money. There were 20s, 5s, 10s, whatever, just things that were just stuffed into the box that she was planning on donating to a woman's shelter for women who were being battered and bruised. That's what it said on the box. It said it had to the shelter, and apparently she was going to donate this. Oh, wow, what a wonderful lady. Well, then come to find out, the lady with the 2 kids that had been hit were on their way to a woman's shelter. Oh my gosh, this is insane. They were on their way to the battered woman's shelter because she had been beat up by her husband. So a lot of her injuries that happened in the accident wasn't the accident, it was from her husband hitting her. Oh my God, this is insanity. So him and his wife decided that this money should go to the woman and her 2 children that were in the I guess the third accident, and that they specifically were giving it to her so she could get away and have a better life for her and her kids. And she actually moved out of state with this money to get away from her abusive husband. Okay, so we have this mystery, he said. We're not sure how my grandmother got up the embankment, how she got to this truck stop, which, by the way, where the accident happened was 15 miles from the truck stop. Wasn't 5 like they had originally thought, 15 miles. So a 90-year-old woman, or 90 plus, made it up after an accident, made it up the embankment, this huge embankment, and walked 15 miles to a truck stop. Okay, so who is this mystery woman, you ask? He says, we kept asking around, trying to find out if anybody had died on that stretch of highway, if anything, nothing. They couldn't figure out what any of this was, how it was connected, who this woman was, and why is she so tall. So, this apparently has been a mystery within the family and within the community, apparently, for a while now. Well, there is a story here. Supposedly, in the late 1800s, a woman who was pregnant had been beat to death by her husband, a woman named Polly. And he threw her down that embankment. And her body was discovered somewhere in the early 1900s. And people just assumed it was her. Of course, people didn't know. But the body that was found, there was evidence of a child. So, was that Polly? Was the ghost there Polly? Is this true? Nobody can actually find, any written documents of Polly. But Polly was a blonde-haired woman who was very tall. I doubt she was that tall, but apparently she was almost 6 feet tall, which was unheard of back then. And she had extremely light blonde hair, almost white. So, did Polly know to connect all these people, to connect the dots? Did she know what was about to happen? So, now the ghost of Polly on the highway has come to light. So, can you imagine this? So, the old lady, let's recap. Basically, an elderly woman who's just a spitfire and helps the military and was going to donate money to a battered woman's shelter, had actually collected 5s, 10s, 20s and threw in this box just for this purpose of doing this. Had got into an accident. She said a woman helped her, put her in a bubble and helped her up the embankment, floated her up, and held her hand as they walked to this truck stop that was 15 miles from the accident, but said the woman would lift her up off the ground and make her float like a balloon when she got tired. This is what she maintained. Her grandson, an ambulance driver, years later goes on a call on that same stretch of highway, but they didn't know that's where the grandmother's car was. Gets into an accident and sees his grandmother's blanket on her, thinking they did something to the grandmother that day. But of course she didn't. They end up falling in love. They get married, they have children. Fast forward, another accident happens on that same stretch of highway by a woman who was fleeing her abusive husband, who had been beat up, who claims that she heard the voice of a woman saying that everything was going to be okay. An accident ensues. Something gets out in front of her. An accident happens. Her children claim that they were put into a bubble, that a woman appeared and put them in a bubble so they wouldn't get hurt. Again, a tall woman with blonde hair comes out of the woods with one of this guy's grandmother's blankets and puts on her. And then they find out later that the grandmother wanted to put this money that she had in her car to this battered women's shelter, which is where this lady was headed to. They get the money to this woman who uses the money to get out of state, to get away from her abusive husband so her and her kids can live a decent life without being hit. And then they find out that a woman named Polly, who was tall with blonde hair, died or had been found in that embankment. This is rumor, though, nothing written, that she was with child and was killed and thrown down that embankment. So how crazy is that? That to me is, I have to say, one of the most wild stories that has ever been sent to me. That is crazy. And something had to have happened. I know, I work with the elderly. There is no way a 90-plus-year-old woman could climb her way out of a steep embankment and then walk 15 miles to a truck stop. It's just not going to happen. It's just not. And if she did, it would take her a very, very long time. And I'm sure somebody would have seen her walking along the highway and picked her up or called somebody. And that's what I don't understand either, is how did she get 15 miles without another vehicle even seeing a woman walking or reporting it or anything? That's a long ways to walk. But she claims that this woman was with her the whole way and actually lifted her up and let her float when she got tired. So tell me there isn't something watching over things. That is crazy. And and everybody that's involved in the story maintains this is all true. That this actually happened to them. That this actually happened. And the grandmother claimed until the day she died that that's what happened. And she had drawings of a tall woman and her together walking. So, yeah. So tell me if that is not just the craziest thing. I mean, I believe in coincidence, and I believe that some things in life are just coincidence, but then there's other things that are just, I'm sorry, divine intervention, a ghost intervention, whatever you want to talk, that came into play here. There is no way all these chain of events happen without some kind of intervention. Because who knows, maybe that lady with the 2 kids, maybe if something didn't happen, she was going to die, Maybe if she hadn't got away, maybe the husband would have killed her. Who knows? Maybe all this took place just to save her or save those kids. Who knows? Maybe all this took place just so he could meet this woman and they could get married and have kids. I mean, I don't know. I don't know, but for some reason, this happened, and it all started with a 90-plus woman running off the road and supposedly being put into a bubble, floated up an embankment, and helped to walk 15 miles to a truck stop. So, I don't know. It's, like I said, there's too many people involved here for this not to be true, for these coincidences to not have happened. So, I strongly believe this happened, and I do believe that something intervened. Something helped this along. So, anyways, that is what I told you, the several versions of the same story, and the outcome is crazy. So, that's just, wow. I told him, definitely keep that story in the family, because that is crazy. Crazy. Told him put those drawings, everything, and just put it away. So, that's it for that anyways. Okay, so, I just want to do a couple updates too. My friend's house, the one whose is haunted, she has actually decided to move. She has decided to move out of this house, and the reason being, I don't know if y'all have kept up on this, if the old episodes, basically she had moved into this house, and she was convinced that what was in there was a young girl, and that's what it appeared to her. And I kept telling her that wasn't. I could feel it. I went in her house, and I could just feel it was not. There's something evil in that house. Well, she has decided to move, and the reason being for that, it showed its true self to her child. And this thing is not a young girl, it's something else. I don't know what it is, if it's a shadow person or if it's a demon or whatever, but it's not good. So they have decided to leave the house. In fact, the daughter is now out of the house and staying with the grandmother until they can actually get everything up and out. So, hate to say I told you, but I told you. Have you ever just walked into a place and just got the EBGBs, like you're just like, ooh, like something just scared? That's what happened when I walked in that house. I could just feel it. I could feel whatever was there was not nice, was not happy. Wasn't some happy little spirit sitting there. There was something evil in that house, and yeah. So she has decided to move, just like the several other people that have decided to move before her. So, so I'm very happy about that. I'm very happy to have that update. I hope that the realtors actually tell people that this house is haunted and there's something wrong with it. So I know they have to disclose some things, but they don't have to disclose everything. I swear I want to go to her house before she leaves and put little notes inside the closets so this place is evil. But I don't know. So, But I am very happy to say she is vacating, so that was a nice update for that. All right, later on tonight, we should have Encounters of the Strange Kind with Miss Denise Harris. I'm not sure what she's doing tonight, or even if she's going on, because I know she's working late, but I'm pretty sure she's going on, so. Anyways, stay tuned for that. This week we have several shows. We've got Zach Morrison with his new shows. We got we'll be having Planet B.O.B. on Monday, which is going to be fun because Denise Harris and I we're going to be doing the big one again. We do these once in a while, what I call the earth busting episodes, where we actually, because you know me, I'm one that prepares for the everyday. Me and Denise are strong believers in preparing yourself for everyday events, such as, weather, snowfall, tires blowing, whatever. That's what we strongly believe that you should be prepared for. But there are several people out there that believe prepping is about prepping for large volcanoes, meteors, whatever, what I call earth-busting events. So we're going to be discussing earth-busters and what you can do to survive them, if they are survivable. So definitely tune in for that. It's going to be fun. Y'all love it. So anyways, that'll be Monday night around 11 Eastern, 10 Central. We always do ours. If you guys are wondering why we do our shows late, Denise works late and I work third shift. So we kind of have to do them either on my days off or when she gets out of work. So we do them pretty late, but you can always tune into them the next day or whenever. And we also do replays. So definitely tune into that. And this weekend, I'm going to try to get some replays going of the shows from this week. So Sunday night, I think I'm going to try to get some replays going, like Zach Show, different things like that. So definitely. And then, of course, I'll be doing a replay of the Freaks in the Basement with Mr. Chris Stevens, who is awesome. He played a lot of new music this last Friday. It was pretty cool. So definitely, if you can get into that, tune into that. You can see any of our shows, get links to them on KBLP LLC on Facebook. And then you can also go to KBLP LLC 4 on YouTube. Some people say it's easier to listen there. I don't know. But definitely give it a listen. And also, we have the personal stuff here. Like I have the Planet B period, O period, P period on Facebook. We have that. There's several things. Denise has a horror group called True Horror Junkies. I have Horror 3 Ring Circus, which is the lighter side of horror. And there's the Art of Darkness. There's so many places that y'all can go to check out on Facebook, different groups. Go into them. You'll love them. So, and definitely keep sending me those stories. I love these stories. I love them. But like I said, the alien / Bigfoot type stories, I'm going to forward to Denise Harris because that's more her alley for her show, for Encounters. So definitely, trust your stories will be read and Denise might do them on her show. So keep sending them, please. I absolutely love them. Like that story tonight was just crazy. I loved it. So anyways, y'all have a good night and stay tuned for Miss Denise Harris later. And thank you for listening. Bye.